I remember the exact sound, not the kind of sound you think you'll ever remember, but the small, stupid little sound that somehow sticks. It was the tinny beep of my phone when a notification popped up while I was standing in line at Ridgefield Transit, and right then in less than 3 breaths a woman stepped in front of me, smiled like she owned the place, and everything that followed exploded. That's the hook. And yeah, I'm starting with it because if I didn't, you wouldn't believe how ordinary the whole thing felt until it wasn't ordinary at all. My name's Tyler Beck. I'm 35. I run a small landscaping outfit, Beck & Sons. Even though it's just me and a beat-up truck and the one kid I subcontract when the jobs stack up, and I don't like drama. I don't court it. I don't perform it. If anything, I avoid it like a pothole on a rainy morning. So when a woman with a bronze tote bag and a look that said influencer slid past me at the ticket counter and tried to charm the attendant with a laugh, I raised an eyebrow and did what felt like the only natural thing. I said, "Excuse me, you were behind me." She turned. Her smile sharpened. She said, "Honey, I have a priority pass." I saw the pass badge, laminated, a little ribbon, but she'd also taken an entire step in line, and it was the way she stepped that made it more than a move to save time. She stepped like she was shifting someone else's morning, like she'd learned somewhere that lines were a suggestion for other people. So I said it again, but quieter. "You were behind me." She laughed, loudly. The register laughed, the attendant echoed, because that's what service people do. And then she put a hand on her chest and said, and I can still hear the cadence, "Oh, sweetheart, don't be rude." Rude to me. As if politeness were a currency she could spend. As if my irritation was the joke and she was the punchline. I'm telling you that because I need you to feel how small moments can carry enormous charge. I needed the scene to be ordinary. Fluorescent lights, coffee steam, the cardboard-scented liner of the ticket counter, the crowd shuffle. That ordinariness is what makes the spike of conflict so sharp, like hitting ice under otherwise calm water. I didn't want the scene to blow up. I'm not a confrontational guy. But there are boundaries that feel like the outlines of a person, the place where polite passivity ends, where your family, your dignity, your day-to-day life get trampled. That was that moment for me. I was here first, I said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't performative. It was a statement. She tilted her head and said, "Well, then maybe you need to learn how to mind your business." Which is a phrase people use when they want to wrap condescension in a blanket. Now, this is the kind of thing you imagine resolving in 2 minutes. One exchange, 2 breaths, and the world moves on. Except that in Ridgefield that morning, phones were already raised like tiny flags. People are quicker to film than to intervene, and that's a truth of public spaces now. My friend Sam, God bless him, was in line with me. He's the kind of person who tells a joke with his eyebrows. He's also got a phone on him more than he has spare change. Sam didn't lift his phone because he wanted to. He lifted it because the look she gave me was the kind of look you don't ignore. He thought it was funny. Maybe he thought it might make for some lighthearted content later. He tapped record. A few others did the same. An attendant shuffled, asked the woman for her pass, and she handed it over with a smile that belonged on a set. She filmed back, her camera faced me for a second, then she turned it on herself and started talking, soft and practiced, toward her phone. "You won't believe this guy's so rude. Ridgefield rude." Her voice was syrup and acid. This is the moment where I should say I kept my cool. And I did, for the first minute. I told the attendant it was fine. I didn't want to make a scene. But she leaned into the camera and said, "He was aggressive." And the man behind the coffee counter, who was 6'2" and had a voice like a foghorn, said, "Sir, we're asking you to step aside." That's the phrase people use when they want you to go away, but keep your dignity in the trash bin. I felt my face flush. I felt the weight of people's phones like a second skin. The woman, I'll call her Maya Hargrove because names matter, and this story needed new ones. She pushed the narrative. She was good at it. She had a way of telling a story with 12-second cuts and a wink. She leaned forward at the camera and said, "He threatened me." She didn't say what the threat was. She didn't need to. She held up a hand, just a tiny hand gesture, and that was the end of the story for the first clip. That clip hit the internet like a match hitting tinder. Within hours, my name, which had been Tyler Beck and no one to anyone, was reframed as angry traveler, threatening guy, escalator of violence. People who had never seen me decided they knew me. My notifications filled up with messages, more than messages. They were verdicts. Strangers wrote, "Block him, report him. Ugly men like you ruin public spaces." A few were meaner. Some were genuinely worried. One mom sent me a long note about safety and how she appreciates people who film. "Now I want you to sit with the part where a story gets made faster than the truth. Facts are slow. Stories, especially performed ones, travel fast. They come already edited. You can fit a whole person into 3 seconds if you know the craft of suggestion." Maya knew it. She had practiced it. Her clip was a perfect little spectacle. She, bright and composed. Me, backlit and looking like a man who had somewhere to punch. I'm telling you all of this because the internal pressure became real. I work with dirt and seeds and the steady work of making things grow. I don't have a PR team. I have my mom, who texts me scripture and recipes. So when the clips started trending on the feeds I barely used for anything besides birthday invitations, I did nothing at first. I didn't want to feed the machine. I told myself, let it blow over. I told myself that justice doesn't require me to amplify the thing blowing smoke in the first place. But then the messages started. Clients canceled. A local handyman group, a small forum where tradespeople swap tips, and job leads started talking about me like I was a liability. "Watch out for this guy," someone wrote under Maya's repost. It hit me economically and personally. My reputation is how I pay the bills, how I put gas in my truck, how I show up for the people who trust me to do a job well. The public interpretation became a force that could affect my livelihood. So what do you do when a story is out there, shaped against you? You look for witnesses. You look for footage that isn't edited to vilify you. Sam, bless him, sent me the file he'd recorded the side angle, uncut, 42 seconds of plastic reality. He attached it in an instant message and said, "Thought you might want this." The file was grainy, but it showed the sequence clearly. Woman steps in front of Tyler. Tyler says, "You were behind me." Woman laughs into camera. Security asks Tyler to step away. Woman says he was aggressive. I opened the file, and my stomach dropped. Not because it looked good, I still looked like someone mid-argument, but because I saw the precise sequence and the proof that what Maya had claimed was at least incomplete. She had reconstructed the scene as if her version was the timeline. This is when the pivot in the story occurs. It's the midpoint of the movie, the moment where either you fall or you fight. For me, the pivot came with guilt and a sliver of righteousness. I could have stayed quiet and let the internet tear someone apart who had done me a minor wrong. Or I could fight, and not with flame, but with footage. I posted Sam's unedited clip on a couple of accounts, wrote a caption that was as honest as a receipt. Here's what actually happened. Context matters. I sent the clip to a local transit authority email and asked them to review their CCTV. The reaction was a slow burn, then a quick flare. People started comparing my clip with Maya's. Side-by-side edits went up. People with bigger audiences than mine, small-town reporters, a commuter vlog channel grabbed the footage and said, "Look, here's the sequence." Maya responded with a live stream because that's the new courtroom, and she was calm and polished, and for a while she still had the upper hand. But then something interesting happened. Sponsors who worked with her, a sunglasses brand, a boutique chain, started getting messages. They checked the timeline. They didn't want the smoke. Sponsors are fickle. They have no loyalty to narrative. They have loyalty to risk management. It's worth pausing here to think about motive. Maya's motive, which I only learned later from a few public posts and a friend's whispered intel, was not purely malicious. She'd been trying to build a personal brand for a couple of years. She invested time and money into a look and a voice that sells. People like her are often under pressure. Engagement metrics, the need for content, the fear of being invisible. When you're that close to the edge, any interaction that can be framed as a moral victory is a post waiting to happen. That doesn't excuse lying or manipulating, but it does give a texture to her actions. She wasn't cartoonishly evil. She was, for lack of a kinder term, ambitious, and she saw the world as a stage where she needed to perform. As the pieces came together, the raw clip, the transit footage, a couple of eyewitness statements, the public mood shifted. It didn't happen all at once. Narratives flipped slowly, and then so fast you can't catch up. People who had shared Maya's posts started deleting their shares. Influencers who had retweeted her video posted clarifications like little white flags. Her follower count dipped, and yet she was not defeated in a way that satisfied a courtroom drama. She posted a long thread about how men provoke women in public all the time, and how victims have the right to be believed. It was an argument loaded with real pain. It complicated the picture. There's a moral fog here that I want to be honest about. When someone is falsely painted as an aggressor, it hurts and it can ruin you. When someone who's been mistreated tries to be heard, they deserve belief and support. The internet, tragically, does not do nuance well. It prefers binary, guilty or innocent, villain or victim. You have to understand that I was never aiming for spectacle. I wasn't trying to cancel anyone. What I wanted was context to reclaim my life. But context doesn't have the same visceral force as a 3-second clip. So the fight became one of persistence, sending footage to reporters, answering messages with restraint, telling the truth in plain English. It felt and feels absurd that something so simple could be so dramatic. But it was dramatic. It affected people I know. It affected the rhythm of my work. A client who had hired me for a wedding venue landscaping gig canceled, then called later and said, "Tyler, sorry we panicked." That conversation mattered. It made me realize the casualty list of a viral lie. Small businesses bleed slowly, in ways that social media doesn't care to notice. And then came the day Maya returned to Ridgefield Terminal. I didn't expect her. I was there, of course, because part of the thing with small towns is that you run into the same people in the same places. I was in line for a weekend train back to the suburbs, the kind of line that smells like coffee and the late surrender of commuters on Friday evenings. She arrived flanked by 2 acquaintances, a man with sunglasses and a woman with an expensive-looking coat, and she moved with the poise of someone performing a comeback. She saw me, and the camera in her hand flickered toward me. For a second I wondered, will she apologize? Will she avoid me? No. She moved toward the ticket counter very deliberately and asked to speak to a security supervisor. A cluster of people watched. Some of them looked like they'd read the timeline and felt schadenfreude. Others looked uneasy. When the supervisor, Officer Rivera, who later told reporters she didn't expect the whole thing to go public, stepped forward, Maya held her chin up and said in a voice that was all velvet and practiced steel, "I'm here to document the harassment I've received." She showed a phone, full screen with comments. The supervisor looked at me, and I felt all the little decisions of the past weeks compress into that look. "Sir, would you mind stepping aside?" she asked. The phrasing of it was a script we'd all learned. Step aside, diffuse, de-escalate. This is the cinematic beat, the public gaze, the charge in the air, a small community theater of power. Maya positioned herself like a protagonist in a morality play, and the crowd began to take sides. Someone in the back, a guy named Gabe who knew Sam from high school, stepped forward and said into his phone, "He didn't threaten her." Another voice said, "Maybe let the security review the tape." The crowd hushed like a tide pulling back. And then Maya, with everything on the line, her follower count, the sponsors' contracts, the whole scaffolding of her monetary identity, lost it. Not in a violent way, not with fists, but with a breakdown that was almost classical, the kind where a person collapses under the weight of their own construct. She started to cry and then to rage, and she shouted, "You don't get to change my story." She accused people of gaslighting her. She accused me of orchestrating a smear. It was messy and real and painful to watch. What happened next felt like a modern parable. People who had earlier condemned me now were watching a woman in public disintegrate. The site produced compassion in a few, contempt in others. The supervisor, who had seen more petulant meltdowns than either of us, made a call to remove Maya from the terminal for causing a disturbance. As they escorted her, the cameras kept rolling. Some of the footage was sympathetic, some of it was not. The nuance of human behavior, the messy, contradictory nature of motives got flattened on timelines again. After that day, the story entered its closure chapter and its open-ended, uncomfortable epilogue. Maya's sponsors paused collaborations. Some issued statements about taking the matter seriously. She posted a long apology video a week later that read like a press release written by a committee, where accountability was discussed in the passive voice. In her apology, she said she had let the situation escalate, and that she was committed to learning. Some people found the apology sincere. Others thought it performative. I didn't feel vindicated by any of it. Vindication felt hollow, a small, quiet replacement for the anxiety of watching strangers decide your fate. And this is where the heart of the story lives, and how it changed me. There's a temptation when you've been publicly misrepresented to want to strike back in thunder, to orchestrate a downfall that mirrors what happened to you. I resisted that. I'm not saying I was noble. I was practical. I didn't want to become the thing I was railing against. But I did want changes, small, policy-level things that matter to people who operate in public spaces. I wrote to the Transit Authority. I asked for better signage, clearer enforcement about priority passes, and guidelines for how staff should handle staged videos at counters. They responded. They updated their protocols. They assigned a liaison for incidents involving recorded content. It was bureaucratic. It was slow. It was, importantly, something. There's a temptation to tidy this up into a neat moral. Don't lie online. Don't jump to conclusions. But life isn't a bumper sticker. The real takeaway is Messier. People are actors and victims and opportunists and everyday saints, all at once. A single interaction can reveal, sharply, how brittle our systems of trust are. A viral clip can be a weapon, a confession, a cry for attention, or a plea for help, sometimes all of the above. You can't always tell by the way someone frames their story. Let me give you a few human corners of detail that matter and that you don't get in 3-second clips. My mother called me after the first wave went viral and said, "Tyler, be careful." She meant it in the deep, small way that mothers mean things: protect yourself, but also remember who you are. Her call reminded me of the life I had beyond the feed. Clients who trusted me with their homes, kids who needed their yards done for spring, an aging truck that needed new shocks. The internet's judgment couldn't unring the bell of those obligations. That grounded me. On the other hand, Maya had a backstory too. Friends of hers said she was working 3 jobs, and that her content was a thing she had built when life hadn't offered anything else on a silver platter. That doesn't absolve manipulation. If there was manipulation, and there was, but it gave her more humanity than most of her detractors allowed. This is the juncture where we have to talk about accountability and the right to be believed. Women and marginalized people have, historically, been denied credibility in real and harmful ways. They face dismissal when they speak out. That truth is real, and it influences how people respond to stories like mine. It makes some people quick to believe the woman in the clip because of a history of disbelief toward victims. It makes others reflexively defend anyone accused. The internet flattens these complexities into screens, likes, and hot takes. The better route is to demand evidence, to believe victims, but also to ask for context, a balance that feels precarious and necessary. So what does justice look like here? For me, it was procedural rather than punitive. The Transit Authority instituted clearer protocols. An online commuter forum created a resource for people to submit raw footage of incidents instead of just speculative posts. Maya, for her part, did a series of community talks about online responsibility and the pressures of building a brand, which drew applause and skepticism in equal measure. She volunteered at a domestic violence shelter for a short stint. Whether that was sincere or performative is for her conscience to know. The public, as always, had mixed feelings. The last scene I want you to picture is quiet. I'm on a train home, the kind that goes slow through the suburbs and clacks against the rails like a metronome. I look out at houses with porch lights on, kids biking, lawns that need edging. I think of the tiny acts that become big stories, and of how we as neighbors and as strangers are both harmed and helped by the narratives we choose to share. I'm not asking you to take my side. I don't want a cheering section. What I'm asking, hard and simple, is that when you watch something, pause. Consider context. If someone looks guilty in a clip, ask for the full tape. If someone claims harm, listen and seek corroboration. We can be compassionate and curious at the same time. We don't have to pick one. Before I close, there are a few things I learned that felt like lessons rather than lectures. 1. Documentation matters. If you're in a public space and something matters to you, you can record, but be mindful of ethics and privacy. 2. Reputations are fragile in an age of scalar narratives. Small things can go big quickly, so be careful how you respond when you're on the receiving end of a moral storm. 3. Accountability doesn't always look like public shaming. Sometimes it looks like policy changes, community dialogue, and repair that actually helps people. And now, I'll be honest, part of me still wonders if the arc of the story was fair. Was the backlash against Maya proportionate? Was it merciless? Did people who defended me become the same sort of weapon people I opposed used against others? These are questions that don't have clean answers. That's what makes them worth asking out loud. So here's where I need you. If you've stayed with me this long, tell me what you think. When is it right to call someone out online? When does calling someone out become a digital mob? How do we balance empathy for people who claim harm with demand for evidence and context? I want your takes, the messy, honest kind. Drop a comment. Share a story if you have one. And if you've ever been misrepresented by a clipped video, or if you've ever seen someone weaponize a narrative, I want to hear that too. If this story moved you, share it with someone who argues quickly on social media. Maybe it'll slow them down for a second. If it pissed you off, say why. If it confused you, say that too. They say, please allow staff time to review recorded incidents. It's not justice in the grand sense, but it's a start. I'm not a hero in this story. I'm not even a good guy in the way the movies define it. I'm a guy who got into a small fight that turned into something big, who tried to respond in a way that preserved his life and his work, and who learned that in a world of edited truths we need to be guardians of context. If you walk away with anything, let it be this. Before you hit share, before you retweet, before you crown someone guilty or innocent with a 3-second clip, breathe. Look, ask for the full tape. That small pause might save somebody's life, or at least their paycheck. All right, your turn. What would you have done in line? What do you think about Maya? About me? About the way the internet decides who's guilty? I'm sitting here listening.